let's talk about my 3 favorite kinds of whiskey and what makes them unique. Welcome to the tasting room, where we drink adult beverages
and judge them.
And I have no idea why this one is so small.
I think we purchased it when we were
going to do a tasting of it or something. We were just
going to cut down on our alcohol consumption. Ha ha.
Yeah.
Ha ha. So who are you?
I'm Brian.
I'm Derica.
And these are 3 types of whiskey. We have bourbon or American whiskey, which is not actually the same thing. So let's say bourbon. We have Scotch and we have Irish whiskey. And they're represented by Jim Beam, which is probably the most common bourbon. It's actually pretty decent. We also have Jameson, which is a very common Irish whiskey. And we have Johnnie Walker Black, a very common, well-known brand of Scotch.
Now, this comparison is just the very tip of the iceberg, and I mean that quite literally. Mm-hmm. There are so many different variations and flavor profiles included in each type of these whiskeys. Plus, the world of whiskey is far much greater than simply Irish bourbon and Scotch.
It's also, well, these are my 3 favorite kinds. It's also almost an unfair comparison because this costs about twice as much as the Jim Beam, and the Jameson falls somewhere in the middle. So there's a little bit of a price difference here, but it's okay. Let's talk about bourbon first. We'll do bourbon. We'll do largest to smallest. So let me just get this open. Bourbon is American, okay? It can only be made in the United States. You can make something that's like bourbon other places, but it will not legally be called bourbon. Bourbon has to have a 51% corn bill in the mash, which means the distillate, the fermentation process that they use to make this, has to have 51% corn. Also, it cannot be distilled past 160 proof, and they do that to maintain some of the very light aromatics and botanicals that show up in the process of the corn maturation. It's also aged in new oak barrels. That's important. They're charred, but they have to be new oak barrels.
And that means nothing has been
previously aged
in it. Yeah.
It tends to be sweet, spicy, kind of, depending on the mash bill, because they can range from a lot of rye to a lot of barley and be very, very different. So that's bourbon, just the very basics of bourbon. Let's do Irish whiskey next. And we're just going to pour these out and we're going to sample them and talk about them. Irish whiskey is usually characterized with a biscuity, almost creamy flavor.
It tends to be a lot lighter, more floral, more almost botanical.
Right. And part of that comes from the fact that they use malted and unmalted barley, and they triple distill it. So if you think vodka, a lot of vodka is triple or even more times distilled. And many of them still use a pot still, which is a different kind of still than it's like a big, it's the classic moonshiner still, okay? And that creates a rounder, fuller feel. I could be a little bit wrong here. I'm not a distiller. I just really like whiskey.
A side note about those pot stills, a lot of them are ancient stills.
And
and each little ding and nook and cranny, they believe, and I'm going to agree with them, creates a slightly different flavor profile during the distilling process.
And so much so that if they get a new still, they will actually go around with a hammer and ding it up to be like the old one. I've heard that. I don't know how true that is anymore, but I heard that. I like to think it's true because that's just fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the difference where Irish is lighter and easier to drink, but let me just go over something here. This is 40% alcohol. Jim Beam is 40% alcohol, and this is 40% alcohol. I'm pretty sure we chose these on purpose because they were all the same. So that tells you, even though the Irish might be a little lighter and easier to drink, it's the same amount of alcohol, okay? There's kind of a myth going around I drank Irish whiskey. And they make it like it's a manly thing, I can drink Irish whiskey. But bourbon's less or Scotch is less? No, they're all basically the same. Whiskey has to be at least 40% alcohol. So these are the minimum that whiskey can be. They go higher, but not today. And then we have Scotch. Now, 2 things. Must be made in America, must be made in Ireland, must be made in Scotland. That's partially where their names come from. Now, contrary to popular opinion, Scotch is not made with the actual peat moss in the fermentation or in the distillation. The peat is used as the source of fuel, because they burn it, to dry the malted grains, okay?
So the way that you malt a grain is you let the grain start to sprout. You don't want it to sprout completely, so you need to stop that process. And the way they do that is by putting it under a peat fire. So it's the smoke from the peat that they're burning to stop the germination of the malt that infuses that peaty aroma and flavor, not actual peat in the brew.
Right. Now, this is where whiskey and beer have some similarity, because the reason they germinate or malt that mash, that barley, is because that gets the amylase going that helps to convert some of the starches in the barley into sugars that can be fermented, because yeast can't ferment starch, but they can ferment sugars. So that's why they do that. In beer, you tend to not have to worry about stopping the process because you're going to boil the heck out of it. But when you're making whiskey, you definitely want to stop that process. And that's where the smoke comes from, just like she said.
If you're a plant nerd like I am, it's a good way to kind of understand the process is that you have a seed, right? And the seed has all the nutrients and all the ingredients that needs the plant to grow. Once that plant sprouts, some of those nutrients are now readily available, and that way it can be fermented as a spirit.
Now, Scotch is a little bit unique compared to these other two because there's a fairly wide range of Irish whiskey. Bourbons all follow a fairly similar profile for the most part. They're gonna taste like bourbon, okay? Scotch, however, can be everything from the lightest of the lightest Irish whiskeys all the way to burnt tire, Band-Aid, and hot leather.
And we will, oh yes we will, do a more in-depth profile of just Scotch and the three primary regions that make up the different flavor profiles available in Scotch.
Now, this is a blended Scotch whiskey, and a lot of people seem to think, oh, if it's blended, it's no good. That is totally and completely not true.
And I think part of the reason why people believe that is they don't understand what a non-blended brew is.
Well, here's the thing. You also have this term called single malt, and a lot of people seem to think that single malt means that's from one barrel and one. No, it's not.
Nope.
Single malt simply means one malt, usually barley, almost exclusively barley, and one distillery. But that single malt can contain multiple different years, multiple different barrels, all blended together to create a flavor profile, which by definition makes it a blend. A blended Scotch, when it says that, literally just means the same thing, but not from one distillery. So it's multiple distilleries blending together to create a flavor profile. Is there a reason why that is inherently bad? No. There really isn't. There's ultimately no difference, but it makes single malt more expensive because that one distillery has to source all the malt themselves and distill it themselves. So that's the main difference. So nearly all Scotch is a blend in some way, but so are all of these because they do the same thing. In this one bottle might be 8 or 10 or 12 different years worth of whiskey samples to make that flavor profile. That's how they keep consistency, because otherwise the grains are different every year. The weather could be different. All those things change the way it works. Also, I'd like to point something out about Scotch. Scotch is actually usually aged in used bourbon barrels.
Go figure.
Yep, they use the new ones here, and then they send them over to Scotland, and they age Scotch in it. Awesome. Gotta love that. I don't think they've always done it that way, but that is how it's done. Now, a lot of times they will age Scotch and not so much Irish. They'll age it in like sherry casks and all kinds of finishes and stuff like that. You don't really see that with bourbon. You'll see that with, there's a few American whiskeys that are starting to do it. Not really Irish. Irish they like their stuff the way they like their stuff. And I'm cool with that.
So another thing of note about age is that if there's ever an age statement on any whiskey, the age that's listed is the youngest of the blends put in there. So just because it says
12 years,
it's 12 years, that means the youngest brew in there is 12 years. It could have a 40-year in there if the master blender decided that it needed that flavor profile to make it taste like what you expect from Johnny Walker Black.
And I think Jim, for bourbon, I want to say it's 2 years or 3 years. If there's no age statement, 2 or 3 years. Irish whiskey, I actually don't know. It might be the same, 2 to 3 years. But so we have very different ages of whiskeys here.
And each different category has its own regulations, and they must
Comply.
comply. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
So in theory, even though this one says age 12 years, it is possible there's older whiskeys in this bottle and this bottle than in this bottle. This is why whiskey is so cool, because there's so much going on. There's so many things. And there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of misinformation. We actually learned quite a bit from the Whiskey Vault.
Yep.
That is where I learned quite a bit and started a deep dive off into whiskey. And honestly, I watched them for a long time. I haven't watched in years. Yep. Yeah, we both did. And learned so much about whiskey. And then I went and started the research myself and verified some of that information and expanded a little bit more into it. But anyway, let's get to some tasting notes and what to expect. In general, Irish whiskey is going to be a little bit lighter and easier. Bourbon's going to be sweeter and spicier, rich though, very rich. And Scotch is all over the board. Now, Johnnie Walker Black has a little bit of peat. It's not heavily peated. And if you look at these glasses, you can see there's a difference in color between them.
Yeah.
Not so much in the bourbon and the Irish.
I think many of these add...
caramel coloring added? Yeah. I don't know. They have to say it. They have to say it if they do, and I'm not seeing it. I would highly doubt that bourbon does.
This one doesn't.
Bourbon, I don't think they're allowed.
This one's aged 4 years.
Okay, there you go. This is 4 years. This is probably 3 to 5 years. I don't know what Jameson... You know what? I'm going to look it up just because we know what the other two are. How long is Jameson aged for? Google Food to the rescue. 4 years.
Okay.
Okay, so that's cool. 4 years, 4 years, 12 years. Now, color difference. The barrel that it's aged in will have a big impact on its color. How long it's aged, generally older ones will be darker than younger ones. But the distillation process can have some effect, but realistically, it comes out of the still as white, like clear. So mostly it's from the aging process that creates the colors. I do believe this has just a little bit of peat though. But anyway, let's start.
You want to start with bourbon?
No,
Start with Irish.
We should start with the Irish.
Yep.
And there's an order to this on purpose because I think the Johnnie Walker is going to have the most flavor, then the bourbon, and then the Irish. Now, when I say that, I don't mean it as an insult. I just mean it's going to be the most powerful flavors, meaning if I drank that one first, this one might taste more like water, even though they're both 40% alcohol.
Speaking of water, I'm getting the water out so that way we can cleanse our palates in between, so our sensors will be receptive to the nuances of each beverage.
All right. So I just took a smell. And we're using Glencairn glasses, and you saw me doing this, the swirl. What that does is it funnels all those fumes straight up, and that way you get the best smell from it. We use these glasses for a lot of tastings simply because they do that really, really well. You can taste mead, you can taste wine, cider, beer, whatever you want out of these glasses, and it works beautifully well. Wine glasses have a tulip shape as well. These just, it's even more refined.
Yeah, it's really great. And whiskey is one of those things that if you really enjoy smelling things, there are so many potent aromas in whiskey, regardless of which style you choose, that they are a delight to all the senses.
Very lightly peated, if at all. I'm going to look that up. I didn't really smell any peat in the Johnnie Walker. But what are you getting off of that one? I get biscuity cookies.
I'm getting, definitely getting the alcohol. I'm getting a little sugar, but I'm trying to figure out what kind of sugar. Typically, I get a maple sensation off of whiskey.
Oh, okay.
Which is
to me, Irish has its own distinct
which is more prevalent in Canadian, but we don't have that in the mix today.
And there's no maple syrup in Canadian whiskey.
No.
Before anybody starts thinking of it. It does have a maple character to it, but I think that's more just happenstance. I think it might even be in our head. I don't know.
And I feel like there's a slight floral note in the aroma as well, which I typically get in Irishes.
Light, floral, cookie, like sugar cookies, things like that. That's what I get. Obviously, the alcohol is there as well, but there's the sugar you're thinking of. I'm thinking sugar cookie is what I get from that.
Yeah.
Now, we're smelling that. Let's smell bourbon next.
Okay.
Before we taste.
Another note, we talked about the glassware that we're using. We're also sampling these neat. That means they're at room temperature and nothing has been added. We haven't added any additional water. We haven't changed their temperature. It's just pure, unadulterated beverage.
Now, in this one, I get brown sugar, vanilla, a little bit of spice, like almost cinnamon, but not quite cinnamon. It's a very rich, heady note. It smells stronger than the Irish whiskey.
It does.
And I think it's just because bourbon might not be as refined as Irish whiskey. Like the triple distillation process makes this very refined, very smooth. And then it's aged for 4 years in the barrels. Whereas bourbon, I don't know, it just feels a little more rough around the edges to me.
Sure. Like if you want to keep with the confection analogy, if Irish is a sugar cookie, this is more like some gingerbread or gingerbread cookie.
Cinnamon rolls.
Yeah, the spice is like a combination of spices.
Yeah.
It's like cloves, cinnamon, cardamom.
Yep, all those. So if you like pumpkin spice, you might like bourbon. Yeah. And, okay, to smell properly, to take an aroma smell, you want to do the swirl and then get your schnoz really in there.
Yeah. And
each side of your nose might have a different smell, too.
Yep.
And if you are not accustomed to doing it, at first you might need to be here. Then you can work up to here. And then
you just stick your nose right in
be
there.
like me. See, that's how I do it. But I've been drinking whiskey for a long time.
It smells really good.
Yeah. Keep in mind, this is like a $23 bottle for the 1.75 liter size. But yet it still has a lot of fine characteristics to it.
Now that's for us here in the United States.
Yeah, it might be different.
Now, we have some really great friends who are also part of our admin team that live in the United Kingdom.
And he can get like the Irish whiskeys and stuff like that super cheap. Some of the Scotch is super cheap.
Where the bourbon's more expensive.
Are far more
so
expensive.
we tease each other and, oh, I got this for only this much, and vice versa.
Wow. Okay, as far as strongest smell, Johnny Walker. But it's a more refined, strong smell. It's instead of brown sugar, it's actually more of the molasses with a little bit of smoke and just a little bit of there's a smooth sweetness there.
There's a complexity to Scotch that I just really appreciate it. And when you start to try to find describers for it, you come up with some crazy stuff. And that's because your brain doesn't know what it's doing.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, this smells like a tire.
Now, this is a very lightly peated Scotch. There are non-peated Scotch and there's heavily peated Scotch. We didn't want to do the heavily peated because that would just throw this all completely off. It would taste so different. So the lightly peated and a very popular one is what we went with. There are other ones that are like Glenmorangie, Glenlivet that are unpeated completely, and they're going to be more like an Irish whiskey, though not exactly the same. They still have their own character all their own.
Yep.
But
typically, the aromas I get with Scotch don't fall into the confectionery realm.
no,
They're more
savory.
like old books, a leather chair,
Burnt rubber, Band-Aids after they've been on your body for like a week and you peel it off.
campfire, so many really heady things that
I thought you were going to taste it.
we're still talking about
we are?
aroma here.
Oh, okay.
He's jumping the gun.
I want to taste some whiskey.
He wants to drink some whiskey. All right.
Anyway, so yeah, there's such a vast range. And when I hear people say, I don't like whiskey, it's like when they say, I don't like mead.
You probably just haven't tried the right one yet.
Exactly.
Because there is a full spectrum.
Another thing I'd like to say is there's no such thing as a beginner whiskey and an advanced whiskey. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah.
You can get used to flavors just like with anything else.
Sure.
But to say that, oh, you should avoid an Isla when you're first starting out, I think that's bullshit. I don't believe that at all.
I think the reason why people say that is because it's so different than most things people are used to that it might be a shock to the system.
I also think it's gatekeeping. But
It's a little bit of a elitism, and
I'm an aficionado of Scotch, so I can drink this. You probably want the lighter stuff. Yeah, that's bullshit. I hate that crap.
Anyway, let's get to tasting some Irish whiskey, shall we?
Yep.
Thank you,
I don't think it
Jameson.
required a learner's permit in order to buy
I
any of these.
appreciate you already, even though I haven't drank any.
Yep. Jameson is a pretty run-of-the-mill Irish whiskey. It's a good one, but it's not anything super fantastic or special. And I don't mean that as an insult. What I mean is it's not an exemplary, like outside of the norm of Irish whiskey. It's actually a very good example of a good Irish whiskey. I've been drinking so much bourbon lately that tastes like light.
Yeah. Now, if you saw me, I was chewing my liquor, and that is called the whiskey chew. And
We
that
call it the Derrica Chew around here.
and that's why I just do that to everything now, because it really helps coat your palate and you get all the nuances because every part of your mouth is coated by this lovely liquor. Now, Irish for me, as I'm doing that, starts to transcend, starts to morph, starts to show different aspects of itself to me, which I find really appealing. Initially, I'm not getting much sweetness. I'm getting a nice mouthfeel
Very creamy.
and some of those botanical notes. And then the sweetness starts to get more pronounced for me.
Now we're saying sweetness. Keep in mind, there's like almost no sugar in these. The only sugars that it has are what it absorbed from the aging process, because the distillation process removes all the sugars. I get like a sugar cookie, creamy, but still very light. It's not heavy at all. There's an ethanol burn to it, but it's not harsh.
Yep.
Very smooth. I don't like to say smooth because smooth is a weird thing to determine. That's why I like to say it's creamy or it's velvety, because smooth means it's smooth, that kind of thing. It's just it's just a stupid term to use.
Yeah, velvety and creamy would be great terms for
Yeah.
Jameson.
And I'm trying to choose my words very, very carefully so that I can properly explain the differences that I feel in these different whiskeys.
Lots of times when I drink whiskey, even though I appreciate the full spectrum of whiskey, I can't help but make the face. Jameson did not make me have that reaction today. So thank you, Jameson.
The pros are really nice, floral, light, cookies, those kind of notes. Some of the detractors to me on Irish whiskey, in particular Jameson, is it does have an odd bitter note towards the 3/4 palate for me. That is not the most pleasant. I've had others that don't do that, so I know it's not really an Irish whiskey thing. Like Writer's Tears doesn't have that. There was the other one, I forget. But even Tullamore Dew, which is also a Jameson product, does not really do that for me. But we didn't choose those because they're less common.
Yeah, we were trying to pick
Stuff that everybody could get.
run-of-the-mill
Yeah.
of these different types of whiskey.
The other detractor is Irish whiskey usually for me seems slightly watery. Now, that's not because the viscosity is any different between them. It's just the mouthfeel of them. There's a lot more aging, like a lot more barrel feel in bourbon and Scotch than there is in Irish.
I also
good and
feel,
bad.
and I know you disagree with me, but I feel that the triple distillation process of Irish may make it be more cleaner.
Oh yeah, absolutely it does.
So therefore, it doesn't have some of those notes that are retained in the other distillation
I
process.
completely agree. That is part of it. They make a very refined product, and that refining process makes it less in some ways and more in other ways. And that's why I say these are my three favorites, because there are days that I want an Irish whiskey, something nice, refreshing almost, light, still lots to explore, lots of complexity. And there are days that I want something that I really like, challenges me to drink. And everything in between. It really depends on the day.
Now, I know here in the tasting room, we tend to judge beverages. I don't really feel the need to
There's no
judge
judging today.
here.
We're describing.
We like whiskey. Yay, that's our judgment. We're more here trying to distill, haha, pun intended, some of the knowledge that we've accumulated over the years about the different types of whiskeys and make this be kind of like a whiskey primer. So
Yeah.
that way, if you're new to the world of whiskey or you want to understand more about the differences of these three different types, hopefully we'll give you some food for thought and some conversation starters.
Yeah, and I also thought, this is a great way for us to talk about whiskey and introduce it to the channel. A few people have asked us to talk about this, and this is going to be a longer video than usual, but hopefully there's a lot of good information, and it's really about the entertainment value of trying these things out and testing them. And this is one thing that we used to do a lot of. We would go and buy 3 or 4 or 5 different whiskeys and get home and pour out a flight and taste them and compare them and talk about the notes. And we weren't even on camera.
Yeah,
this is before we had YouTube channels and everything.
Fun thing for us to do.
We used to do it all the time. And it's amazing how much you learn when you do that. And when you start with different types of whiskeys, you can very quickly learn what makes each type of whiskey different. And then once you've got that down, then you can get into the different, like within that.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to a point where you could put out 5 or 6 different bourbons and I could drink them and tell you which was which.
Yeah.
That's how good we got at the tasting. It's been a while since I've been able to do that.
I'm not sure we can do that anymore. But
I could probably pick out a couple of them, but
there was a while where we were basically drinking whiskey and that was it.
Yep, I had $3,000 worth of whiskey on the shelves.
It was
these shelves.
Yeah.
Before it was all mead and wine, it was whiskey.
We had some high numbers there.
Yup. Anyway, on to the bourbon. Ladies first.
Ladies first.
I would say of the 3, I drink bourbon most often.
Yeah.
Partially because I like bourbon a little bit more than I like Irish whiskey most days, and it's not as challenging or aggressive as Scotch. So for an everyday drinker, for me, for my taste preferences, bourbon is actually really easy because it has a really good punch, lots of flavors, good complexity, but it's not so challenging and it's not so simple. And I'm not trying to be insulting when I say simple for Irish whiskey, because Irish whiskey is anything but simple, but it's a bit, in my opinion, it's a bit less complex than a bourbon.
So if you were watching my face just then, you saw when I did the swallow, I made the whiskey face. So there's just something about whiskey for me. Yeah, Brian's going to show off now and not make any facial expressions at all. You kind of do the involuntarily aggressive swallow thing because it just hurts so good and it makes your face do that, unless you're Brian. One of the things that I really enjoy about bourbon, comparing it directly after the Irish, is that I'm getting a lot more wood character on the bourbon.
You get a lot more barrel character. And that's the brand new charred barrels. They're going to extract a lot more linens and vanillins and tannins. And often you'll find that bourbon is a darker color. It's more reddish than Irish whiskey. I was very surprised that they were almost the same color today. That was a little surprising to me. One of my favorite bourbons is Wild Turkey 101, which is, the reason we didn't use that one is because it's 51% alcohol. So it would actually be a different comparison. So we try to keep 40% across the board.
Yeah.
That is what's called a high rye bourbon. I believe Jim Beam is too, because I can taste the rye.
Our preferences tend to lean, particularly for me, to the higher rye mash bills for bourbon, because rye brings an extra note to the party. It's kind of a spicy, peppery note, which I find really appealing.
Now, when we say high rye, what that means is 51% of this has to be corn in the mash that they ferment, but the rest can be barley, it can be more corn, it can be rye. There's a whole bunch of grains that they can use in that mash bill, and a lot of them are a mixture of those things, but 51% must be corn. Okay, so it's kind of like mead that way, where it has to be mostly honey.
Right.
So this has to be mostly corn, where the other two are actually mostly barley. They're almost completely, in the case of Scotch, it's like almost all barley.
Right.
So it's amazing that you get such similar yet different flavor profiles from vastly different grains.
Right. So in comparing the two flavor notes here, besides the more pronounced wood notes, I'm getting more pronounced notes across the board.
Caramel,
so
brown sugar,
you're getting
vanilla.
The vanillins from the oaking is definitely coming through and blending well with that sweetness that's inherent in the flavor, which I honestly don't know where it comes from, but it's lovely. And that's one of the reasons why I really like whiskey. So it's like a more aggressive flavor profile, but all the notes work together really well and create this lovely warming beverage.
It's got more punch and more flavors, but it's not quite as refined as the Irish whiskey.
Yep.
And please do not take it that I'm making fun of this or Not at all. I'm just trying to give descriptors.
Yeah, there's a time and place for any of these beverages that we have on the table right now. And regardless of the price point, please don't be that person. It's like, oh, it's only this much money. It can't be good. Try them.
Yeah.
Compare them with the upper level price points, and you may be pleasantly surprised.
I have seen people who claim to know whiskey taste very expensive and very cheap whiskey and not be able to tell the difference or guess wrong.
This particular version of James Beam we have put to the test against other bourbons, and it scored quite nicely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Wild Turkey 101, I've said it before, is another one. You put that up against some very expensive bourbons, and it holds up very, very well.
The one thing that I'd like to add about Wild Turkey 101 is that for its upper range of ABV, it is shockingly smooth.
Yeah, I would venture to say it's slightly smoother than Jim Beam.
Yeah.
Even though it's 10%
I'm
higher
not really sure how they did that, but it's like a magical thing.
It's matured a little bit longer.
Where they did a fantastic job of getting that ABV up there, but still having a lovely, smooth, and delightfully experienced beverage.
Now, what's really funny, I haven't had it in a long time, but there is a Wild Turkey 80 or 81. I don't like that one. I haven't had it in a long time, so that may be different, but I didn't like it. There's also the
Rare Breed, which is above.
Rare Breed, which is usually like 112 proof.
And you do like that one.
Yeah. Here's the thing. All three of those are the same whiskey, just watered down to different ABVs.
Different
and that's
dilution.
a lot of what they do. Like when I said this is the minimum that it can be to be a whiskey, that's a cost-cutting measure.
Sure. Now, there's a unique thing with whiskey when it comes to its play with water. And lots of times people assume that if you add water to a beverage, then you're making it a lesser product. And that is not necessarily true. Granted, they are diluting it to adjust the ABV, particularly when it comes to bourbons. But sometimes, as Brian said, particularly with Scotch, adding even just a few drops with a pipette to your beverage can open up flavors that we're hiding and tone down other flavors. So
we're not doing that today.
We're not doing that today. It's just another side note that I thought was worth talking about.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get to the Scotch in a second.
And that's another reason why one of Brian's favorite ways to enjoy a whiskey, particularly a higher ABV whiskey in the summer here in Florida, is on an ice ball, because as the ice slowly melts, not only is it chilling the beverage to make it more comfortable for him, but the flavor profile slightly adjusts as it gets more diluted.
That works really well for me for bourbons and Islay scotches, which Islay Scotch is the one that's heavily peated. Those I tend to really like doing an ice ball with. Okay, we're on to the Johnny Walker Black. Now, I haven't had Johnny Walker Black in a long time. I was doing double black more often than the black. But this, I'm actually kind of impressed. I'm getting like a sort of a combo of maple syrup and molasses with a little bit of cherry vanilla. Really interesting smell. And that's changing as I smelled and tasted the other things, because that's how your brain works. Your brain is going to fill in gaps where it doesn't know what to call something, but also it uses a bias. If you had something spicy for lunch, things after lunch may not taste as spicy or smell as spicy because you had something very spicy. So all those different things and factors come into play. Your mood can alter the way you perceive flavors.
Yeah, this one is reading more campfire for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Got a little bit of smoke.
I'm getting the wood notes that I was getting from the bourbon, but it's more like campfire wood rather than just barrel wood.
Now, remember what we said earlier. This was aged in ex-bourbon barrels. So you're going to get some of the bourbon notes in a Scotch. Usually, they're overtaken by other things like peat and the even the type of water that they use and the malt that they use can really have a huge play on it.
I'm getting some of the vanilla notes from the wood as well, and definitely a mixture of sweetnesses like you were talking about. It seems like it has a full spectrum.
But do you get the
different
cherry vanilla?
I get the vanilla. At first I got the cherry, but now that I'm smelling it more, the cherry's going away.
There's There's just, and that's the funny thing is none of those things are actually in there.
Nope.
I mean, there is vanillins and there is linens, which can add like an acidic note.
Which comes from the wood.
Right. But as far as the fruit, there's no fruit in this. But there is smoke and there is all of the wood character. And that's what defines whiskey, okay? If whiskey didn't have wood character, it'd be called vodka. I'm not even kidding.
Well,
Vodka can be made from the same grains. You can make vodka from potatoes, from corn, from barley. Sure. If you don't age it in a barrel, it's vodka. That's heresy to say.
All the hate, please direct it to Brian.
But it's true. When you see like white lightning and stuff like that, that is kind of vodka.
But they're not talking. They categorize that as shine rather than vodka.
Okay, here's what moonshine is. Moonshine is illegally made distilled products. I hate seeing moonshine for sale in a liquor store.
I know it's just a marketing gimmick.
That's all it is. It's a gimmick. You cannot legally sell moonshine.
Because then it's not moonshine.
And it's not moonshine anymore. But white whiskey, I would still classify that kind of as vodka.
That's fine.
It is.
I'm going to drink this now.
Yeah,
I'm done smelling it.
You're done? I could never be done. Toffee. Toffee, smoke. Oh, you know what it is? Burnt sugar.
I'm getting some of the plasticky, rubbery.
I don't get
just
so
a little
much.
A little touch of those. I thought I was going to make it through without making the whiskey face, but at the very end, yeah, it showed up.
This is a little more smoky than I remember it being.
Yeah, especially on the end.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of a burn.
On the end, it's more smoke. That's interesting.
But I definitely am getting, when I say cherry, the cherry is very, very light. It's almost like if you had a pile of sugar and you dropped cherries in it and let them extract into the sugar a little bit, that's the kind of cherry sugar I'm talking about, like that sweetness. But in this case, it's almost like you did it in a caramel instead of sugar.
Oh,
so it's got
caramel. Yeah,
that little bit of a burnt sugar note to it with just a hint of cherries in there. Really, really nice. It does not have the creaminess of the Irish whiskey, and it doesn't have the burn of the bourbon. They're all unique in their own way.
Intend to do an experiment like this and do a flight of whiskeys, 3 is going to be a good number for you because
no more than 4.
If you go too far beyond that, it just starts to muddy the waters, and you're really not going to be able to.
And if you end up getting too inebriated, you lose all track of everything anyway.
Also, don't do it alone.
Yeah, do it with a friend.
Do it a friend or a couple of friends.
Or an enemy even. Just,
You want to have somebody that you can have a dialogue with, so that way you can talk about the different experiences. Somebody is going to taste something that you didn't taste.
Yeah.
And then once they express that to
Suggestion
you,
is powerful.
Go ahead and taste it again and see if you can find it.
Yep.
So right now I am in search for cherry.
Okay. I got it more on the smell than I did on the taste. That's why I said on the taste it was more of like an infused sugar that I got. Mm-hmm. But the wood character on this is very, very strong. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's ex-bourbon barrels is what's making it even better. But that Scotch is almost exclusively ex-bourbon barrels, which is really crazy to me. But that might be why I like a lot of Scotches, because it has bourbon character. Bourbon's my favorite of all the different whiskeys.
Yes.
I can say that with some amount.
If you haven't figured that out already.
But that doesn't mean I don't like the others. I mean, I really like Scotch and I really like Irish whiskey too. I even really like Canadian whiskey.
My favorite is a Scotch representative that is not on the table.
Glenmorangie, right?
Yeah. But shockingly enough, Glenmorangie is a style of Scotch that is Speyside.
Speyside, yeah.
And so they have a completely different flavor profile from
Yeah, they're
Johnny
a lot
Walker.
more like Irish whiskey, but still different.
And because Glenmorangie for us is pretty readily available, that was always my go-to Scotch. And then we decided to do a test when we were doing our different flavor profiles. And we're like, okay, well, let's get 3 different Speysides and see if Glenmorangie is the winner, because we assumed it was going to be. And it was not, which was shocking.
Which one did you like best?
I don't even, was it
Glenlivet?
Was it didn't have like a F, then
Oh, it was like 10 years ago.
it was wow. A while back.
Glenn something.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't remember. But one of my favorite whiskeys of all time is actually Cal Ela, which is an Islay Scotch.
Yeah.
And that's the one that reminds me of sitting on my grandfather's lap at the cottage when I was like 3, having him read a book to me while there's a fire going in the potbelly stove 3 feet away that's just a little bit too close to his leather-armed chair, so it burnt the leather just enough that you can smell it, but you can smell the smoke in the cottage. It brings me back to that memory.
Yeah. If you can
That's
if you can
awesome.
trigger a really positive memory with anything, be it a beverage, a baked good, a plate of pasta, whatever, a walk in the woods, then that's a good time, right? Because
And that's why we like to smell these things and enjoy them. Like, a lot of people seem to think that all we do is get drunk. Well, that's not true at all. I actually don't like to be drunk.
yeah, I think being drunk is our least favorite aspect of consuming alcohol.
Yep. I like the enjoyment, the flavors.
The aroma.
Don't get me wrong, a little buzz is nice, but I don't like being drunk. I don't like losing my senses. I don't appreciate that. Oh, I poured more bourbon because
He had to. He couldn't help himself. So hopefully that has given you an idea of the different range of these 3 particular types of whiskeys. If there is a particular style of whiskey that you would like us to talk about, or maybe another 3 comparison, be it
we need to do an Isla flight.
we can do a Scotch flight where we do Islay, Speyside, and Highland.
We can do that. Yeah.
We can do Canadian.
I'm not as familiar with Canadian whiskeys. And, most of the reason for that is we can't get most of the good Canadian whiskeys here.
Yeah,
We can get
They send us the crap.
Like Crown Royal. Yes, Crown Royal is actually whiskey, believe it or not. A lot of people don't think it is. They're like, I want a Crown and Coke, but I don't like whiskey. Crown Royal is whiskey. No, it's not. Yeah, it's whiskey, trust me.
Surprisingly enough, the Canadian whiskey that we can get here that we really, really appreciate is Kirkland's Canadian. It's good drinking.
That is like candy.
Yeah.
I mean, that just, you can drink so much, and it's still 40% ABV. You can drink so much of that so fast.
That brings the maple sensation to the table.
See, I find Jim Beam like that too. Like Wild Turkey, I can drink a considerable amount, but Jim Beam, I can drink a lot of because it just feels like candy. It's like sugar. It just goes right down. No problem.
So, have you tried whiskey? What is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below.
And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.